welcome to RREAF. We're excited to have you guys here. Obviously, this is, like Craig said, is the third summer that we've had interns. And so one of the things that I would encourage you all to do, and that Brad would like to encourage you all to do, is to go out and seek out the opportunities you have here at this company. I mean, as you could probably very easily tell from Craig, just in a couple of minutes, you can just see the wealth of knowledge that he has. Whether it's regarding deals or the law or transactions or how all that fits together, there really is just a large opportunity for you all as interns to just listen in on some meetings, listen in on some ideas, look at some of the stuff that we've got going on, and just write down some questions and just walk around and ask somebody. I don't think there's anyone at this company that would just be like, no, go away, I'm busy, leave me alone. They would take the time to answer your question and help you guys out. So I would really encourage you guys to go and seek out that opportunity and seek out the people that you can talk to, like Craigle, like Tony, like Graham, like Jack, like me and Carlos and whoever, because there really is a lot of wealth of knowledge here at this company. So that would be that. Yeah, so this is Power BI. Obviously, it's kind of cool looking, I would hope. But really what it is it's kind of like a high-level view of everything we're doing at the company, right? Because as you all know, if you know anything about RREAF, it is a vertically integrated company. So from the start of a deal, we're sourcing a deal, we're have our in-house legal counsel, we're raising the equity for a deal, we're sourcing the debt, and then from there we're passing it on to our management companies where we asset and property manage. We're also have CapEx teams that are doing the CapEx on our deals. We're also building ground up developments. We're really taking a deal from inception or conception all the way to the very end, right? Through and through, which means that there's a whole lot going on and it can all get very complex, right? So I do have a slideshow. Let me go ahead and pull it up real quick. SharePoint is basically Microsoft's file management system. So it's basically how we're saving our documents in the cloud and how you're going to be able to access all of our documents on our properties, our deals, our legal docs, all that sort of stuff. And Power BI is what y'all just saw, basically just a data visualization software that kind of digests all the raw data that we have in, whether it's Excel sheets, APIs, web pages, etc., and puts it into a very condensed view that you can then make data-driven decisions off of. Because like Craig said, perspective is everything, right? So very quickly about me, why do you want to listen to me and why does my perspective and opinion really matter? I'm Mike Provosty. I'm a system engineer and software engineer here at RREAF. I graduated from the University of Florida with a Bachelor of Science in Computer Engineering. So I've got a whole lot of kind of technical knowledge and had to take the time to really learn real estate when I came here 2 years ago. So I kind of work on, again, SharePoint, Power BI, back-end data information, all that sort of stuff. If y'all ever had that one business technology class that you really hated because they made you do programming or SQL or R or anything like that, I do all that sort of stuff and more complex things than that. So again, about RREAF, founded 13 years ago. It's a vertically integrated investment firm, like I said, with many verticals. Verticals is in quotes because that's the word that Kip loves to use, right? So I'm sure some of the asset management guys and acquisitions guys have already kind of gotten a little bit of a taste of it. But we do multifamily, we do hospitality, both business and beachfront, and extended stay hotels. We do RV parks, we do land deals, we do development deals. We really are just in everything. And we're probably one of, if not the only, private firm that's really across so many verticals, and it's probably going to continue to be across more verticals. Kip's and Craigle's creativity knows no bounds. So who knows what we're going to be doing next year and the year after that. But I'm sure it's more and more and more. And as you can see here, we did over $1 billion in transactions in 2021 and then again in 2022. So, I mean, we're really moving a lot of deals and doing a lot of things here across a lot of verticals, which lends into the importance of SharePoint and Power BI, right? Because you need to be able to track the data, you need to be able to manage the data, you need to be able to find the data and really do things and useful things with it. So first we'll start off with SharePoint. Again, like I said, this is somewhat of a new thing, but it's basically we've taken all of our documents that we used to have on a shared network drive. Some of the older interns, that's a familiar face, would know the Z drive, and it was notably a mess. There was any number of files all across the top level directory. And it really just kind of took a while to train new interns and also new employees on like where to find files, how to find files, where is something saved. And it was really just kind of difficult, you know. It was unnecessarily difficult. And so we needed to kind of fix that up, clean it up, and make sure that we could find the files we needed and also know where everything was, right? So, like I said, it was a mess, too many unrelated folders up there. The next issue, if the office lost power, because it was on a network drive. So if the office lost power, that was it. Like, no one could work, you know? Next benefit of it, there's additional automation capabilities, tools, and integrations, namely Power BI, in addition to a lot of other like AI and stuff you can use, cleaning up folders. You can be like doing some language stuff where you're reading documents and parsing them for information, all sorts of useful stuff like that. And, you know, the last point is just kind of a bit of a joke. It's, you know, it was 2023. It was time to be in the cloud and off network drive. It was time to move into the 21st century. So we had 3 tenets whenever we were doing this. Number 1, asset focused. Basically what that means is obviously as a real estate firm, we have assets, right? That's kind of like the nature of the business. We wouldn't really be doing anything if we weren't talking about assets, right? So we want to focus on our assets. We want to make sure that's like the prime and really what you're looking at when you look for a file. Because when you're looking for a file, it's probably about an asset that we own, have owned, or already own, or will own, right? So asset focused. Next one's department based. So you can segregate the files that we have and where things are saved by the department. Like a PSA, for example. That's not super relevant to someone in asset management if it's on a deal that we haven't closed yet, right? So that would be in your acquisitions department. The next bit is archive. So then whenever you're going back to look for a file, like an underwriting model or a PSA or another legal document, you want to make sure that when you're looking for it, you find the most up-to-date one and the most relevant one, right? So for a legal doc, it's the final fully executed version with all its amendments and addendums. So we can dive into those real quick. So again, asset focused, pertain to assets we own, have owned, or will own. It's fairly self-explanatory. We have a standardized folder structure, and this is probably the most important point I'm going to make. So if you remember nothing else, please remember this part, because it's probably going to be what some of y'all are working on. So we sort them by property code, and what our property codes are is, here's a little example of it, TST000, right? Just a simple 6-digit unique identifier for all our properties. So the way that it's coded, if you will, so T is the type when the PSA was executed. So our most recent deal, I want to say it was SE3, Southeast 3, which is a multifamily deal. I think it was 10 or 11 properties across the Southeast. One of them we bought was in Indiana, actually. The first 1 or 2 we bought in Indiana. So the T for that type would be M for multifamily, right? Fairly self-explanatory. The next bit of it is the state code. So the state you bought it in that case would have been Indiana, so IN. And after that, 3 numbers, which are the chronological index in which you bought it in that state, bought that type of asset in that state. So because that was the first and second multifamily we bought in Indiana, they were MIN001 and MIN002. Does that make sense? It's pretty simple. But that's what you'll see whenever you're going through our assets folder. You'll see just a bunch of 6-digit codes, and that's what those mean. Next one was department-based. So like I mentioned, after you filter into assets and you have all your property codes there, where most of your files are going to be, then you're going to go to department-based, which is, you know, acquisitions, underwriting, asset management, legal, accounting, tax team, RCS, RREAF Construction Services, RREAF Res, who are our property management team, etc. And so the point of this is then organized by department. Property codes are in assets. This then, again, goes back to reducing that issue where we had so many extra files and folders on the top level. And so then the next bit is that you've got permissions per department. So basically, if you're in acquisitions, you need access to acquisitions and underwriting, and that's where you're going to do most of your work. So that's what we would have permissions to. You know, you wouldn't necessarily need permissions to the asset management stuff because you're not really dealing with any of that. So it just creates another barrier of making sure that people are filing the correct way per their department, and that they're able to file with their department and only with their department. So that way you're reducing the number of like duplications, if you will, of files, where someone's like, oh yeah, like this is just a fake example, but like, okay, in acquisitions, we're gonna save by type and then by state. But say in asset management, we're like, okay, we're gonna save by state and then by type. You know, this just makes sure it's consistent between each department or within each department, right? And so yeah, department folders are for your in-progress stuff again, and like I mentioned earlier, that property code folder, that's the holy grail. That's where all the final, fully executed, most up-to-date, most recent, most relevant information for that asset is and should live. And that's just, you know, again, extremely, extremely important. It's the most important thing I say all day. And the last one is archive. So it goes back to the same thing. You want to make sure the most recent, most up-to-date information is in those property code folders. So just archive the rest of the old stuff. You know, if you've got some in progress models or whatnot, just put it in like a working folder, working subfolder, an archive subfolder, just so whenever someone goes back to look for that document, they'll only see the most up-to-date, most relevant, most important one. All right, so Power BI, which was actually the reason I ended up working at RREAF in the first place, because our COO, I'm not sure if you all have met him or had the chance to meet him, but Jeff Holzman kind of had this idea and this dream and this vision of a way of taking all of the data that RREAF has, because it's a lot, right? And putting it onto a platform where anyone in the company can access it and read it and see it and start to make some decisions based on it, right? And he looked at a lot of different off-the-shelf options. Power BI was one of them. I believe he looked at AppFolio, he looked at Domo, he looked at Tableau. He looked at like making an actual web portal and, you know, checking out the costs and all that sort of stuff. And eventually he landed on Power BI, which is a Microsoft product. So why did we want it? This is kind of the why from Jeff, really. So as RREAF scaled and continued to scale, again, like I said, we've done massive amounts of transactions in the last 2 years, and we're up to about 2.8 to 2.9 billion in assets under management. You know, we're a massive private equity firm by all comparisons. You know, it became increasingly important to have a way of looking at all the different assets and discrete assets, filtering them, seeing how they're operating, seeing what's going on, getting access to that information, because it's impossible to know every single asset individually and know every single detail about it without accidentally mixing them up. So Jeff really wanted a system that allowed us to see the information about it so we could access it, we could know it, and that way everyone was aware of what was going on, what the company was working on, what was happening, without, you know, accidentally missing up or missing anything or any information. And again, one of the reasons Jeff picked Power BI was because we have so many different verticals, right? Obviously, we started out as a multifamily firm, but within the last 5 to 6 years, we've really grown. You know, we've grown out the hospitality arm, we've grown out the land and development arm, we've grown out the RV parks, as David mentioned, and all that sort of stuff. And there's literally no off-the-shelf program that you can get from any company that'll be like, oh yeah, we'll do your multifamily, hospitality, RVs, developments, like we'll do it all. Yeah, we got it, no worries. If you walk up and ask for that, they'll be like, yeah, if you've got like $1 million a year, then yeah, sure, we can start talking. And it's like, oh, you know, it's a hefty cost to really get something like that. And it's really expensive, and it takes a lot of effort and takes a lot of time to really get something like that going. So Jeff landed on Power BI, and that's kind of why we wanted this, is because, you know, like I was saying earlier, Kip and Kragel's creativity knows no bounds. So who knows what verticals we're going to be doing in the future, but we needed a system that allowed us to be dynamic, and as dynamic as the deals here are, we needed something that allowed it to flex with us, you know, and work with us. So again, I just listed out a couple of them. Oh, I forgot communities, actually. That's another good one. A couple 3,000 acre tracts, those are going to be fun. So again, what is Power BI? I kind of touched on it a little bit, but so it's a data visualization software that's part of Microsoft Power Platform, which is basically just Microsoft's like, hey, look, here's some business intelligence, here's some analytics, here's some tools you can do. It's basically a lot of like kind of low code to no code applications that allow you to do some more like deep data-driven artificial intelligence, machine learning sort of technology and utilize that in your analysis and everything. Power BI is just one of those platforms. It's the data visualization part of that. And if any of y'all know pivot tables, y'all aware of that? So Power BI is basically like Microsoft's next step. It's like pivot tables 2.0, but fully fleshed out and fully developed, right? That's kind of, you can kind of think of it that way. It can import from various sources, which is another benefit, because as diverse as our verticals are, that's also as diverse as all of our data imports are. You know, we've got RealPage for our multifamily, which y'all that are working at residential will be familiar with RealPage in one site. You know, we've got our hospitality operators that are working on Monday.com, which is another platform similar to that. We've got Ambridge who's working on like automated Excel documents. So there's a whole lot of different data and different sources that are coming in. And there's a reason that, you know, no off-the-shelf software will sit there and say, yeah, we'll take all your verticals. We'll deal with all that data for you. No worries. No, because there's so many different things going on the back end and on our data that it's just a pain, and no large-scale operator like RealPage or something like that wants to handle that. So that's what Power BI allows us to do, and so that's why we use it. And one of the most important parts, I guess, is kind of cut off by the Teams thing, but it's basically the other benefit is it allows us to operate on top of people's current workflows. So, you know, as the accountants down in what's it called, in RREAF Residential, for example, while they're processing their financials and they're doing their reporting and they're reconciling the banks and the bank statements and everything like that, we're able to harvest the data that they're working on to be able to pull out the monthly financials and be able to calculate our NOIs, project them, track them, everything like that, just while they're doing their normal job. So, what is it to us? Probably one of the most important things, right? Like, that's what Power BI is, but what is RREAF's Power BI? What does it mean to us? How is it useful for us? So it's a collection of dashboards, again, spanning all of our different verticals, of which there's like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, you know. It's a collection of dashboards that covers all of that information and gives deep perspective and insights into how those are operating, how they're performing, how they will perform, any other like various KPIs which are different between all the different verticals. Multifamily, for example, you're looking at your expense ratios, you're looking at your NOI, you're looking at like your rent roll, or not rent roll, sorry. You're looking at your renovation trackers and how you're improving those, and your ROI, right, return on investment of your CapEx. But hospitality, for example, is completely different. You know, hospitality, you're gonna be looking at your ADR, average daily rate. You're looking at your occupancy, which is how many rooms you sold. And you're gonna be looking at your RevPAR, which is your revenue per available room, you know, which is just completely different than multifamily. So it needs to be able to span all these different verticals and give insights to our asset managers, our acquisitions guys, our legal team, and all that, so they can, you know, make the data-driven decisions that they need to. And again, like I mentioned earlier, Jeff's a pilot, so he loves his airplane analogies. Power BI is that 10,000-foot view, you know, as you're looking out the window and you're looking down, and it just gives you like a real picture of the forest. You know, you can see the whole entire forest of deals, various verticals, various everything at a very high level, and understand very quickly what's going on, what's going out, what's upcoming, what's outgoing, you know, all that sort of stuff. And this is one of the most important parts. Excuse me. So it fosters collaboration because it's giving the awareness to the different departments of what's going on, right? Because like I mentioned at the start of this, and I think like Craig will briefly mention as well, RREAF is a vertically integrated investment firm, right? So like I said, we're taking a deal from the very beginning. Like acquisitions is going out and sourcing a deal, or brokers are bringing them a deal and they're talking about it. They're gonna underwrite it, they're gonna source the debt for it, they're gonna get the equity for it, et cetera, throughout the whole process, right? So we're taking it like from the very beginning to the very end, like a pipeline, if you think of it that way. And so say like acquisitions is gonna go out and buy like a 30 property portfolio, for example. Well, I mean, asset management kind of needs to know so they can get a little bit of a lead time on that, so they can train up their 3 new asset managers they're gonna need to be able to handle that, you know? And so Power BI kind of gives that to them because it allows people to see what's above them in the pipeline, what's below them in the pipeline, and where they fit in the pipeline. It kind of lets you track the whole process. So that way we can make sure we're seamlessly moving date to date and section, or not section to section, excuse me, but department to department throughout the whole process of a deal. So, like I said, this is Power BI. You can see across the top our various departments. These are kind of just the main top ones, the main sections, if you will. And over here, you can kind of follow a deal through its pipeline, right? So acquisitions is sourcing the deal, underwriting's underwriting the deal, then we're raising debt and equity for the deal. After that, we've closed it, and now property management and asset management are gonna maintain the deal for 3 to 5 years, is generally our business plans. It changes, like for some of the hotels, we're just kind of operating indefinitely. And then from there, it's the deal team, which is incoming and outgoing deals. So anything a contract's executed on, it's underneath the deal team, which would be Brad, who couldn't be here today because I think he's traveling. And then from there you get your dispositions, which is where we're selling our assets, right? That's how we're kind of like getting the big kickback and getting the big return of money and return of investment to our investors. So we can just kind of go through a couple of these real quick, and then I think it's generally more helpful, or would be more helpful for y'all to kind of go through on your own time, kind of look through what it is, what it means. And it's something that like you can see some numbers on there, some information on there, and be like, hey, what does this mean? I wonder what this means. And then you can go to that relevant department and kind of come to them with some questions and ask them about it. Like, hey, like, what does this mean? Why is this way? You know, there was a decision point here. Why'd y'all make this decision instead of this decision? You know, what was the risk assessment there? Because there's a lot of really good insights you get from people that way. So generally we've got acquisitions, right? Here you can go, you can see, here's our total pipeline, which I think this is, well, yeah, this has a couple of the old under contract RVs. So you can see like the former RVs we had under contract, we had 22 or 21, I think. Yeah. And so you can see them kind of in the light blue across the country. Those are the ones that we had under contract. And you can also see our various different verticals that we had that were incoming. You know, we've got multifamily, hospitality, development, RVs, student housing, all of which are probably blank because we're not really doing any deals right now because of the way rates are. So the next one is going to be underwriting. These were deals that we were underwriting. So we've got the main one right now, I believe, is the Amelia and Ocean Coast recap, as well as Cherryville. So they're building out the underwriting models, developing the packages, both for debt and equity, and going through that whole process. You can kind of see where they're at. Next one's our active fundraises. So this is basically the equity raises we're doing right now. So you can see we've got a couple across. So we're still raising for our student housing deal, River's Edge. I believe it's in Columbia. We've also got Elevate Communities, which is RREAF Communities deal, which is down in Midlothian, I believe. We've also got 2 in Kerrville, which are some ground up developments for multifamily deals. And so you can basically see how much money we've got in the bank, how much we've got to go, how much is committed, and that sort of deal. So you can make sure as we're getting closer and closer to the close dates that we're fully capitalized and have the money to close on them. Because the way the RREAF operates, we source debt and raise equity for an individual deal rather than just continuously raising and putting that money into a fund where we need to continuously make money for investors. It allows us to kind of go out, select the deals that we think are accretive and we think are equitable and we think we can do a good job on and improve, which means it's basically just generally better for our investors and better for ourselves because we're not constantly under the pressure of needing to make money, right? Because we can choose the deals we want to do and don't do. So the next one's our property management, which is multifamily focused. And here you'll see kind of the main little KPIs, if you will, for multifamily. So you've got your DSCR, your NOI, your occupancies, and your trending occupancy over time, your delinquency month over month, your average rent that's in place. And then you can kind of see how you compare over trailing one market rent to the market's market rent, right? Which is CoStar data. So if you're over 100, that means you're beating the market, which is incredibly strong. Like you can kind of see we have a lot of assets that are either near 100 or above 100. Oh, I've got it filtered to SE3 now, which is our most recent acquisition. But so you can see we've got a ton of assets, over 100, which is honestly like incredible. As you can see, we continue to do extremely well in the multifamily space, partially because we're fully integrated with our in-house property management team. And so the cool thing you can do with Power BI, going back to the insights and whatnot, is you can kind of filter. So here I filtered for our TC21 properties, which is the portfolio that we bought September through November of 21. So about 18 months ago, maybe, yeah, 18 months ago, 20 months ago. You can also filter back to SB12, which is another one we bought across Texas. We've had it for about 2.5 years now, I want to say. And filter to, another portfolio. And again, it just allows you to kind of get insights into portfolios, filter it down, filter it around, see what's going on. And additionally, you can kind of hover over them as well. It'll bring up what we call a little Monopoly card. It's Jeff's favorite little deal. And it's a tooltip that gives you just very quick, high-level information about the asset, right? Where is it? Who's managing it? Who's the asset manager? What do we spend on it? What's the price per unit and cost per unit, etc. I'll skip over asset management for now because that one's like pretty in-depth, but we'll come back to that. So the next one's the deal team. This is actually most people's favorite because this is kind of like the ingoing and outgoing pipeline for RREAF, right? So if you're looking at different types, you can filter by the type of asset and filter by like whether it's on track, almost on track, or not on track, and filter by that way. So for example, we've got a couple developments in line. You can filter down, and these are all the developments that we've got going on. And we've got target closes here. So you can see we've got, a handful of things coming up in the next 2 weeks. You filter by dispositions, which is stuff we're selling. I believe this is lot sales. This one's going to be one of our land deals hitting equity multiple triggers. A whole lot of other stuff going on. So it basically just allows all the different departments, irrespective of where they are within the pipeline, right? Whether they're on the front of the end of the pipeline looking at stuff, or they're on the back end of the pipeline looking at stuff coming out, they can kind of see what's going on in other parts, see what's upcoming, and kind of be aware of and think of, hey, what do I need to do? What is my lead item? How much time do I need to do to be ready for this? Is this something I need to be aware of, which just kind of makes the whole entire process a lot smoother, which really helps to kind of reduce, Craigle's job, if you will, where if we're like missing contract dates, if we're in breach of a contract, this really just helps eliminate all of that and keep us on track, keep us on time, and allow us to continue to do, as excellent as we do in business. And you've also got trackers for how we're doing on the closing process. So we've got a whole bunch of different like checks, right? So this is the start of a deal, right? So you get your kickoff meeting, your deal sheet, your data room, which is your rent rolls or financial statements or appraisals. Then you're getting your debt package out to lenders. Then you're getting your equity sheets out, your preferred and priority equity term sheets in. So it's pretty much just like checks all along the process that if, we're moving along right, then it'll be all green and all good to go. And lastly is dispositions. So this is kind of like our, how we've performed, if you will. So we've sold 37 assets, which is crazy to think about. And as you can see, we sold our assets for $706 million, which is crazy. And that represents nearly a 50% price increase over almost 4 years. And here's our weighted average returns based off the dollar amounts. So we're returning basically double our investors' money over the course of our deals, which that's insane. It's an incredibly impressive return. And the coolest part about this too is you can go and filter, for example, so we can look at just our 2021. So I'll scroll through. So we'll do January 1, 2021 to, let's see, let's change this to December 31st, 2021. So in 2021, we sold, here's our return metrics just for 2021, right? So you're very quickly able to just, without even having to look at the waterfall or go through and filter all the waterfalls and add up all the numbers, do all the math, you can just filter it. Yeah, that's our 2020 return metrics to our investors, which is really powerful insight and really helps when you're trying to have quick conversations and, quick insights and quick, how are we performing? How are we doing? Where can we improve? All that sort of stuff. And last but not least, probably the biggest and juiciest, most exciting one, is our asset management dashboard. So here's all of our assets that we own right now, right? 92 assets all across the Southeast with 2 ESAs and one that's about to open up in the Pacific Northwest. So here, there's all sorts of different things you can do. I'll just go through it very briefly. For example, if you wanted to look at John Davis's assets, you click right there and you can see these are JD's assets. He's Texas, Georgia, Arkansas. He's currently managing $333 million worth of assets, just himself. And they're all, as you can see, multifamily deals. And then, if you wanted to see just our assets in Texas, you just click Texas, boom. What if I want to see just our land deals in Texas? You can hold control and then click it. It'll filter it that way. And you can see we've got just over 204 million of land deals in Texas. So just like from that brief little thing, you can kind of see how quickly and how easily you can kind of gain insights onto your data and onto your information to, make sure you're looking at the right perspective, as Craig mentioned. Additionally, we've got some kind of deeper dives as well into each type. These are kind of our three main verticals, or our two main verticals currently, and it'll continue to expand as we go on. So we've got multifamily, and again, like I was mentioning, kind of your top line KPIs, right? Well, these aren't top line, but these are your KPIs. Your DSCR, your occupancy, and your NOI. It's kind of what you want to be tracking for multifamily. You want to be looking, is my T3 doing better than my T12? Is my T1 better than my T3, and looking at those insights and making sure you're continuing to increase performance. Or if you're like looking and say, oh, well, I've got, let's see how my TC21's doing. So TC21 across the portfolio, we've got a 92.9% occupancy and a 2.29 DSCR. And just like that, you can say, okay, awesome. I'm doing great. And additionally, we've got a bit of a deeper dive on these as well. Drill into one of these. So it's called a drill through. So you go ahead and just right click on the dot or the deal or whatever it is, and you select the type that you want to look at. So in this case, this is our multifamily deal. I think it's Falls at Spring Creek. So you select multifamily details. From there, this is like basically information about the asset. So you've got your team members working on it. In this case, it's Jonathan Novak. Then you've got your RREAF residential team members that are on it as well. You can see the portfolio it's in, its LLC name. You can even click on its website and go check out the website. Makes everything easy to access. This is also breakdown of the capital stack allocation. So here you can see the loan and the lender information, all at the click of a button really quickly, without even having to go through and read all the loan agreements. You can see the breakdown of preferred equity, priority equity, etc. You can even then go look and see like, all right, what does this preferred equity cost? In this case, this is a brief explanation of the waterfall. And again, we've got priority on this as well. You can see that percent. So they're just getting a 16% return to priority. And common is they get a 12% IRR, then 60-40 after the senior splits. You can also see, how it's performing. So you can see its DSCR over the last 12 months. You can also see the NOI over the last 12 months. As you can see, this asset's performing incredibly well. Like it's like a 2.8 DSCR. Yeah. T12 is a 2.8 DSCR, and it's, hovered well above that for a while. You can also, within the same system, you can also do a T3 over 12 analysis. So you can see, all right, cool. Our T3 is doing great. Slightly worse than before, probably because of expenses and labor rates and stuff like that, would be my assumption. You can then also see like the management, which this is basically like the week-to-week sort of stuff, right? The previous one was monthly, month-over-month financials. This is week-to-week. So you've got your AM fees and property management fees and the percent of that portfolio. You've got your occupancy trending. So you can see we were up at like 97% occupancy and we're trending downwards. It's very likely because we're wanting to push the renovations and push the market rents on those, because you usually don't want to be up in like 97, 98% occupied, because it means you can probably increase your rates. And you can see we've actually got a lot of prepaid delinquency here, or prepaid rents here, because the delinquency is negative, which is awesome. Next one, here's, so if y'all know CoStar, I'm assuming y'all know CoStar and market rents and market data and market comps. This is basically a comp set that we have for this asset. So you can go through and compare your asking per square foot versus our asking per square foot, see where we are to the market really quickly. As you can see, this one is slightly below market. And it's, probably because of the breakdown, or probably because there's a discrepancy in the amenities that you've got. But you can very quickly see that insight, see that information. The next one, which is Jeff's other favorite, is linked to all the important documents. So basically right here, you can click and say, okay, I want to see the PSA, which I guess we don't have. But you can click and see the property folder. Oh, they don't have access. Maybe. This is going to be one of y'all's tasks, is fixing all of these.
So if I click on an individual property page, like
Correct.
in a portfolio, and I'm looking for the PSA, I won't have a PSA I may not have a PSA for that.
Which is going to be one of the tasks of several of the asset management interns, is going through and checking to make sure that all of the links are working to the correct assets and correct PSAs, correct legal documents, et cetera. But so it's basically this way you can just access all of the important documents and all the relevant things for an asset very quickly, you know, which makes it very easy and very nice. So that's multifamily, and I'll just go through hospitality and then we can kind of field some questions and move on from there. So as you can see, this is our hospitality vertical. Again, you can notice that KPIs are different, right? ADR, average daily rate, occupancy, how many rooms you sold, and your RevPAR, revenue per available rooms. And you're comparing instead, whereas multifamily, you're comparing month over month or T3 over T12, you're comparing year over year because of the seasonality of hospitality. Just another one of those things that is a difference between our verticals. And so you can kind of look down, you can see where they are, see it on a map, you can hover over one, get your little Monopoly card, right click on it and drill through, go to hospitality. And you can see, here's the information about the hospitality. So you've got your team members, who the project lead is, our team over at Innisfree, who's our property manager on these, their fellow owner operators. And then you can also, again, see where it is, see its website, for example. This one's quite nice. So you can also then go through, again, exact same things. You can see its capital stack. This one's actually maturing fairly soon in about 2 years. Because this is one of the first hotels we bought. Actually, it was the first hotel that we bought on Panama City Beach. You can see its interest rate and everything. Come here, you notice that this monthly financials is different because, and if you look at the DSCR chart, there's like a massive spike up to above a 10 DSCR and then it goes down below to like a negative 0.5. And again, that's because of the seasonality of hotels, right? So you've got your season here, which is going to be June and July. Generally, your season's anywhere from March to like early August, late July. And that's really where you make all your money. And then after that, you're kind of managing the off season from there, which is why you see a massive spike or comparing year over year. And here you've got your expense ratios, your profit margins. So you can see basically how much each section of your expenses is, because that's kind of generally how you want to be tracking hospitality, because you've got basically fixed expenses, then you've got an expense that's in flux based off your occupancy generally, because if you've got higher occupancy, you've got higher expenses because you're paying more people, to turn the rooms, you're paying more laundry services, you're paying more people to work the desk, more people to clean up, et cetera, et cetera. So that's our monthly financials. This is going to be our flash reports. So flash reports are basically your daily night auditing, right? So basically your most recent date, and every single day at a hotel, they'll say how many rooms they sold, how much they sold it for, and they'll send it to our C-suite and our asset managers here at RREAF. And it's got all this information here. Generally, you look at it in 3 periods: your most recent date, month to date, year to date, and you compare that year over year. So here you can see, I believe this was, this would have been 5/30s. Yeah, so May 30th, we had a 55% occupancy and made, $16,000 off 65 rooms, which is pretty nice. You can also then look at this year over year as well. So you click here, you see your room sold, how you did there. You can click here, see your occupancy, ADR, et cetera, et cetera. In similar fashion, this is our market data, but instead of CoStar and a CoStar market comp, it's actually a star report, which I think are actually now owned by the same company, but for a while they were separate. It was Smith and T something reports, and CoStar was just CoStar. So you can see the same indexes here. We're actually this line right here is 100, which would be market basically. We're basically over market in ADR, RevPAR, and occupancy by a significant margin, which is extremely, extremely good. And it means we're performing extremely, extremely well at that hotel. And at the bottom, you can see basically what your score is, and what your occupancy, ADR, et cetera, are versus the market. So
and you can also see which assets you're comparing yourself to. So we're actually comparing ourselves to ourselves because we own Bikini Beach on Panama City too. And then you've got documents, which again, same thing. Click on it, you can go to the different locations and documents, things like that. And I'll spare you all the rest of the drill throughs, but I encourage you to go through and look through them because we've got developments and we've also got RVs as well. In student housing, you can look through multifamily because that's generally how it operates.